this is a really common one that we find more specifically when we're in the shop, but it also appears on online forums quite often. And it will often be the question, what's the best waterproof jacket? You also get it for other categories as well, but this video is focusing a little bit more on that waterproof side of things. And there's no one true answer to that, because if there was the best waterproof jacket, we'd only sell one. You know, there'd only be one that you would use because it would be the best at everything. And the best jacket is very situational, it's very specific. It's also a little bit down to your personal preference and to your different body shapes, body types, because different people will react differently to the fit, size and shape and different features of a jacket. They might not use some of them. So we're in the Trekitt shop today in Hereford, and we've got an example of some of our waterproof jackets here. There's a reason that if you come and visit us, or any other outdoor retailer for that matter, you'll often find that there will be lots and lots of waterproof jackets that are on their shelves. And it might be a little bit overwhelming because you think, well, it's a waterproof jacket, it will keep me dry. And yes, they all should do that, but some of them will have very different feature sets that might be a little bit more specific to different instances. So something like this Montane Phase, for example, this guy here, this is actually the Phase Light, is designed more around a running piece. So it's a much lighter weight jacket using thinner denim materials. It doesn't have some of the other features that you might not need, say, if you were to move right the way up the other end of the spectrum to Le Toc Alpine jacket. So something like this is going to be a lot burlier, a lot harder wearing, have much heavier denim materials on it because the environment you're using it in is going to be vastly different to that one. It's not to say that you couldn't use either of these in the opposite environment. Ultimately, you would still stay dry, but you'd notice the limitations of the different jackets very quickly in those environments. So this is going to be less breathable than the Montane. It's also going to be something that is going to be a little bit less comfortable to run in because you've got more material, you've got more zips, you've got underarm pit zips and things on here. So if you're moving your arms, running, it's going to be a little bit less comfortable. It's also just generally not suited to that kind of environment. So this is going to be cut a little bit shorter, it's lighter weight, it's more packable. This on the other end of the spectrum is a super burly jacket that's designed around a mountain environment. Like obviously there are jackets that are a little bit more of an all-rounder, so things like Haglof's front proof. There are loads of different models. These are just examples that we're using here today. You can pick different jackets from different brands. We're a multi-brand retailer, so we just picked a few different ones that pop on camera. Super easy. But these jackets will have slightly different feature sets where their pockets are laid out, depending on whether you're going to be using them with a harness and things. So you're not going to find one jacket that is the absolute best for doing everything. It doesn't really exist, but you can still probably use your jacket for different things. Gore-Tex has become somewhat synonymous with waterproof clothing in the outdoor world, and with good reason. They make waterproof clothing. They also make things that carry the Gore badge that aren't actually waterproof, and that's definitely caught a few of you out, but that's not what this video is about. Now, when you come into the store, it's usually a store-based thing, or we'll see it online. People will often ask for advice on Gore-Tex coats rather than necessarily waterproof coats. And there's nothing wrong with that. The language has become somewhat interchangeable. Gore-Tex have kind of become the Hoover or the Google of the outdoor world. Might sound a bit strange, but bear with me. So when you're using a vacuum cleaner, you do the hoovering, or you get your Dyson out. You don't use a vacuum cleaner. When you go onto a web browser and search the internet, you Google it. It's kind of the same thing with a Gore-Tex waterproof coat. The terms end up being kind of interchangeable. That's great for Gore-Tex's marketing. They are absolutely loving it. But that does add a little bit of confusion into the market where people think that the only waterproof clothing that you can get is Gore-Tex, and that's not the case. I've got a big pile of jackets in front of me here. There's 7 here, if I remember counting right. But only one of them is a Gore-Tex coat, and that one is the one on top from Sprayway. So these are just examples of the brands that we stock that do potential alternatives to that Gore-Tex membrane. A lot of them do also work with Gore-Tex as well, but these are all models from their ranges, apart from the Sprayway on there, that use alternative membranes. So jacket from Montane that uses Pertex. There are a few different versions of some of these membranes as well. So the figures that are going to appear on screen for each of these jackets will be related to that specific product. That may not be overall what that membrane does, because there'll be a few different versions of it. So we've got the Eco Shell from Fjäriven, if I can actually pick it up properly, Ben. So that one uses the Eco Shell or Eco Shell membrane. You've got Mammut's Dry Technology Pro in the Pace Pro hard shell here. Now, Mammut also use Gore-Tex, as do Montaigne. Fjäriven don't tend to. They've got a few different membranes that they use within their range. They also use Hydratic as well. Another brand that only uses their own membrane or a third-party membrane that isn't Gore-Tex is Artilect, and they use the Empel High and Dry membrane. Rab, a big hitter in the Gore world in recent years. Since they've started working with Gore-Tex again about 3-4 years ago, they used to be very big on event membranes and Pertex. This, as it happens, is a Pertex jacket here, the Arc Eco. And Rab do an awful lot with Gore-Tex as well, but they still use other membranes in certain products along the way. And then we've got the front proof from Haglofs here as well. So the front proof here is another one. Haglofs also use Gore quite a lot, but main thing in common with all of these jackets, to a more or less extent, so they do have different hydrostatic head ratings and different moisture vapor transmission rates or breathability ratings, is they're all waterproof, but only 1 out of the 7 carries that Gore-Tex badge. So when you're searching for a waterproof coat, you don't necessarily have to stop at Gore-Tex. You don't just have to look for that diamond badge. You just ask, pop into your local outdoor store or ask online and do a bit of research into waterproof clothing, and you may find that something from someone else, either a third party or a proprietary membrane, may suit you down to a T. But equally, if you want to stick with Gore-Tex, there's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of options out there, and that's why a lot of these brands will use Gore-Tex, because it's well known in the industry. They'll use that across They'll use that across many of their products, but they will also use their own third-party or proprietary membranes to allow you to have choice in the waterproof market. And it just means that you get more choice, more availability, and they will all perform a little bit differently. So depending on what you're doing, there may be something in this pile or from someone else that we stock that suits you a little bit better than Gore-Tex itself. But if you like Gore, we've got that too. A very common complaint or criticism that we often get about waterproofs is their seeming lack of breathability. And while yes, a waterproof jacket is going to be less breathable than not wearing one, it's still a compromise that we have to make in order to stay dry ultimately. But a lot of that comes down to the practices we have when we layer. So in this example here, myself and Lucy are going on a little walk around Malvern, and I've put on all of my layers straight from the car park, which is a very common thing for people to do. It'll be cold, so you pop on all of your layers and then put your shell over the top as that outer protective layer. In this case, it's not raining, but we're using it as protection from the wind because it is quite a windy day today. But in short order, I'm already having to strip layers off and take those layers off because I've got too warm. I'm going to start to get a little bit sweaty. I'm working a little bit harder, whereas Lucy has fewer layers on, so she's going to be more comfortable and able to maintain temperature a little bit better. So now we've reached a point where I'm having to change layers again, and it's super windy out on the top, as you can see in this little section here. But I'm swapping layers because I've got too warm, and then I'm having to drop insulation, but I've also got a little bit sweaty, and over the course of a longer day, that can really limit your ability to maintain a proper temperature, and you'll probably find that you will start to struggle. On this short little walk, it doesn't really matter too much. I'm fairly comfortable still, but I'm going from hot to cold. I'm having to do and undo an awful lot of zips, whereas Lucy has maintained all of that throughout the walk, and it's only at the summit here where we're going to be stood for a minute that she's popping her insulation on over the top. It's also easier there to then take it straight off again when we start walking. And so that's a really easy way of maintaining temperature, is effectively be bold, start cold. And if you're wearing fewer layers, your jacket will also be a little bit more breathable than wearing all of those layers over and over again. And you're not having to do and undo a bunch of zips. The other thing to factor into this is, whilst myself and Lucy were out walking, we had Lorna behind the camera as well. And every time we were having to stop for me to change layers and stop and change, it affects the rest of your party, it affects the rest of the group. So the fewer times that you have to stop to change layers and to play around with that, the better off everyone's going to be, because they're all able to maintain temperature a little bit easier, everyone's a little bit happier, you don't keep stopping and starting, so your day flows a little bit better. It's just making smart choices when it comes to layering and making sure that you make the best out of the situation when it comes to using your layers appropriately. And this is even more apparent with waterproofs because they are less breathable than some other outdoor pieces of clothing. Still breathable, just less so than some others.
Okay, so another common misconception that we often get is customers come into the store asking to buy some of that waterproofing spray that we sell. That is a DWR spray that works fantastically to give your jacket or your garment some extra water resistance. However, there is a big difference between water resistance and waterproof. We're going to test that today. I'm in a soft shell active insulation piece that's got a DWR finish to it, so it will bead, it will perform in light rain. However, it's not got a membrane, so it's not going to perform under heavy weather conditions. Lucy's in a proper waterproof jacket with a membrane that will perform while she gets doused. We were hoping to be out today whilst it's raining. Alas, the weather isn't on our side today, so we've had to improvise a little bit. We've actually got with us a Nemo shower, and I've drawn the short straw, and I'm going to be getting wet today. We're ready. We're going to make it rain to put this experiment to test.
Make it rain.
We're still going. I'll give this jacket some credit. Its DWR performance is actually pretty good. We've been at this for a little while now, but I'm pretty sure I'm starting to feel it come through now, particularly along the front here. So let's have a look and see if it started to come through. Yeah, there you go. That's pretty obvious. My front is definitely started to seep through and water. Sorry. Sorry. I was looking at the foot pump. Maybe there's a theme.
So I had a nice shower from Lorna there. So you probably can see I've worn this jacket throughout winter, and I now need to reapply the DWR. But this jacket has a Gore-Tex membrane, so compared to Lorna, on the inside, I'm completely dry.
We've just finished that little mini experiment. We didn't have the rain. We made it work with the shower. So we've just tested the difference between using DWR on a jacket and an actual waterproof jacket. So my jacket had a nice DWR finish. It performed really nicely, but eventually Lucy managed to get me wet, as you could see, and I would start to get very cold if that was out for real on the hill. Lucy's jacket, however, with the membrane, she stayed completely bone dry. She'd be absolutely fine out on the hill all day long, no matter what the conditions were. So that is the core difference there between waterproof and water repellent.
Washing and caring for your outdoor clothing is an important part of maintaining it and extending the lifespan of the product for its usable life. You'll sometimes hear people say you don't need to wash your Gore-Tex clothing or your waterproof clothing. Gross. Wash it. It's like any other piece of clothing, it gets dirty and will benefit from being washed. Now, there are specific ways that you are supposed to wash outdoor clothing in particular. This video doesn't focus on that directly, this is just an example of it. But essentially, you'll often hear people say that your jacket, when it's wetting out, oh, it's no longer working, it's no longer performing. It's still waterproof as long as there's no mechanical damage to the membrane, there's no tears or holes in it, or the membrane has delaminated. It's just the DWR coating on the outer of the jacket has started to fail, it's worn away through use. And that's something that has become a little bit more apparent in recent years when many manufacturers have moved away from the use of PFAs and PFCs in their DWR coatings due to their potential damage to the environment. There's some forever chemicals, so they've removed those from a lot of their product or are moving towards that. So you will find that you will have to wash and reintroduce any DWR coatings to the outer of your waterproof clothing to maintain performance and keep them performing at their best for longer. Washing it will help reintroduce that coating, and then usually applying a little bit of heat will help it seal a little bit better. But you may find that you're washing and reintroducing the DWR coatings a little bit more frequently than you used to. But it's still an important thing to do, and your jacket still works.